Now let's look at some past questions that are relating to trigonometry, so we can see how we can apply the concepts that we have learned to solve practical questions. So in the first question, we are told that if tan theta is equals to 4/3, we should calculate sine squared theta minus cos squared theta. So all we have to do now is find the value of sine theta and cos theta. So if I draw my right angle triangle and I call this angle over here theta, I know that this will be my what? Opposite, and this will be my adjacent. So I know that tan theta is equals to opposite over adjacent. So tan theta is equals to opposite over adjacent, and I'm told that that is equals to 4/3. So I can say that the opposite is 4 and the adjacent is what? 3. So now I can calculate the length of the hypotenuse using the Pythagoras theorem. So I can write that h squared is equals to 4 squared plus 3 squared, where h is the hypotenuse. So h squared will be equals to 16 plus 9, and h squared will be equals to 25. So h will be the square root of 25, and that is equals to 5. So the hypotenuse h is equals to 5. So now I know that the opposite is 4, the adjacent is 3, and the hypotenuse is 5. So I can find the value for sine theta. Now I know that sine theta is equals to what? Opposite over hypotenuse. Now what is my opposite? My opposite is 4. And what is my hypotenuse? My hypotenuse is 5. Similarly, cos theta is equals to adjacent over hypotenuse. And what is my adjacent? My adjacent is 3 and my hypotenuse is 5. So I found the value of sine theta and cos theta. But the question asks me to calculate sine squared theta minus cos squared theta. Now I should mention that anywhere you see sine squared theta, it's same thing as writing sine theta then all squared. So this same thing as writing cos theta all squared. So if it were a cube that was here, same thing as writing cos theta all cube. So that is just a side note. So now I found the value of sine theta to be 4/5. So this is like writing 4/5 squared minus, and cos theta to be 3/5. 3/5 squared. And that will be what? 4 squared is 60, and 5 squared is 25. 3 squared is 9, and 5 squared is 25. The LCM will be 25 in both cases, and I'm left with 16 minus 9, and that gives me 7 then over 25. So the value of sine squared theta minus cos squared theta is 7/25, and that makes the correct option option C. Now in the next question, we are told to evaluate the value of sine 45 minus cos 45. Now you will recall that sine 45 and cos 45 are special angles that I told you to memorize earlier on. So now if we check the table, you know that sine 45 is same as writing what? 1/√2. And while cos 30 is same thing as writing √3/2. Now I can write this in another form by rationalizing the denominator. And if you remember our module of solve, to rationalize the denominator, we multiply both the numerator and denominator by denominator. This becomes √2/2. And if you are not clear on what we are doing, you can look on the section on solve. So this becomes √2 over square root of 2 times square root of 2 is square root of 4, and square root of 4 is what? 2. So sine 45 is 1/√2 or √2/2. So the question asks us to find sine 45 minus cos 30. Now I know that sine 45 is what? √2/2 minus cos 30, which is what? √3/2. The LCM in both cases is what? 2. 2 into 1 times √2 gives me √2, minus 2 into 1 times √3 gives me √3. So the answer is what? √2 minus √3 all over 2. And that makes the correct option to this question option D. Now in the next question, we are told that the angle of elevation of a building from a measuring instrument placed on the ground is 30 degrees. So you have a building over here. This is the building, and this is the ground, this horizontal line. Now you have a measuring instrument placed on the ground. Now the angle of elevation from the top of the building to the instrument, so the angle of elevation, which is the angle over here, is what? 30 degrees. We are now told that if the building is 40 meters high, so if the height of the building is what 40 meters, how far is the instrument from the foot of the building? So this is the foot of the building here. So we are told to calculate the distance from this point over here to this point over here, and let me call that x. So if I call here, so this is my right angle here. So since my angle is here and it's 30 degrees, I know that this is my opposite and this is my adjacent. So what equation for right angle relates the opposite and the adjacent sides of a right angle triangle? I know that that is what the tangent. So we know that tan theta is equals to the opposite over the adjacent. So in this case, theta is 30 degrees. So tan 30 degrees is equals to the opposite, in this case is 40, and the adjacent, which is what I'm looking for, is what? X. So x becomes what? 14 over 10 30. And 10 30, if we check our table, is given as what? 10 30 is what? 1 over root 3. So x is same as writing 40 divided by 1 over root 3, and that's equivalent to writing 40 times root 3 over 1. And what does that become? That becomes 40 root 3 meters. So the distance from the foot of the building to the measuring instrument is what? 40 root 3 meters. And that makes the correct option to this question option D. Now on to the next question. And here we are told that a cliff on the bank of a river is 300 meters high. So we have a cliff. Cliff is the same thing as a mountain or a rock. So we have a rock. This is a cliff here. And we are told that the height of the cliff is 300 meters. If the angle of depression of a point on the opposite side of the river, so now you have a river towards the side. Now this is the opposite side of the river. Now the angle of depression from the top of the cliff to a point in the opposite side of the river is what? 60 degrees. And if you recall, the angle of depression is the angle that the line of sight makes with the horizontal distance. So the angle here is 60 degrees and not the angle here. So it's the angle with the horizontal. So that makes the angle here 60 degrees. Find the width of the river. So the width of the river is going to be the distance from the foot of the cliff to the point opposite the river, which is this point over here. So this distance here represents was the width of the river, and I'll call that x. So from our alternate angle, we know that if this angle here is 60 degrees, that this angle here also will also be what? 60 degrees. And this, in this right angle triangle, this side becomes my opposite and this side becomes my adjacent. And we know that the tangent relates the opposite and the adjacent. So I can write out that tan theta is equals to the opposite over the adjacent. So now I have what? Tan 60 degrees now is equals to the opposite, I'm told to be 300 meters, over the adjacent, which I've called x. So x will be equals to what? 300 over tan 60. And tan 60, if we check our special angles table, is what? Root 3. So now we have 300 over root 3. So x is equals to 300 over root 3. But now we're going to rationalize the denominator, because we do not want the root of any number to be in the denominator. So how we do this is that we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. So we have times root 3 over root 3. And what does this become? This becomes 300 root 3 over root 3 times root 3 gives me 3. Now 3 in 300 gives me 100. And that becomes what? 100 root 3 meters. So the distance from the foot of the cliff to the opposite end of the river, or which is the width of the river, is 100 root 3 meters. And that makes the correct option to this question option C. Now the next question, I told that in the diagram above we should find the bearing of R from S. So I'm going to draw that out so that you can see it clearly for those that can't see it. So you have something of this nature. So you have this point over here, which is called S. So that here is the north, here is the south. Then you have this point Q and point R. And we're told that the angle here is what? 44 degrees. Now the question asks us, so at this point S now, I can draw my cardinal point over here. So the question asks me to find the bearing of R from S. So the bearing of R from S. So this is the line that connects R to S. So this is the line here. So the bearing of R from S will be the bearing or the angle that measures from this point over here to where it touches the line over here. Now, I need to find this angle over here. Now I can see that this angle over here, which is 44 degrees, is alternate to this angle over here. Let me indicate that with it. So this angle over here, which is 44, is alternate to this angle over here. So definitely this angle over here will be equal to what? 44 degrees. Now the sum of all these angles will be the sum of this angle over here plus this angle over here. Now the sum of this angle over here, we know that is what? We know it's a straight line. So we know that the angle here will be what? 180 degrees. So the sum of all these angles now will be equal to what? 180 plus 44. And that gives us what? 224 degrees. So the angle from here, this point, or to this point here is what? 224 degrees. So the bearing of R from S is what? 224 degrees. And that make our correct option to be what? Option B. In the next example, I told that a man walks 100 meters due west. So let's assume that the man is at this position from point X to Y. So he's at a particular point X, and this is my north, this is my south, this is my west, and this is my east. He moves due west 100 meters. So he moves towards the western direction for a distance of 100 meters to a point Y. So now this is my point Y. Now it then walks 100 meters due north. Now this is my north, south, west, and east. Now he now moves 100 meters due north. So he moves 100 meters again due north to a point Z. We're now told to find the bearing of X from Z. So if I draw a straight line down like this towards point X over here, I'm told to find the bearing of Z of X from Z. So in other words, what I'm being asked for is to find this angle over here. Now, to find this angle over here, I know that this angle over here is what? Is 90 degrees, as you can see, because I have a right angle over here. I know that this angle over here is 90 degrees. Now, I know that this length that I moved here is what? 100 meters, and the length here is also what? 100 meters. So we know that this is an isosceles triangle because we have what? Two sides being equal. Now, if these two sides are equal, it means that the angle here also must also be what? Must also be equal. And how do we find the angle? We know that one of the angle is 90. I know that the sum of angle in a triangle is 180 degrees. So now let me call this angle over here, let me label it as X. I know that it's going to be the same because this is an isosceles triangle X. So I can write that what? X plus X plus this angle over here, which is a right angle, which is 90, is equals to 180. So 2x is equals to 180 minus 90. So I have 2x being equals to 90. And if I divide both sides by 2, I have the value of x being equals to 45 degrees. The value of x here is 45 degrees and the value of x here is 45 degrees. So now to find this angle indicated by the blue, I can see that this is a straight line over here. I know that the sum of angle in a straight line is what? 180 degrees. So this small angle over here, x, plus this angle over here, which I will call or label as y, is equals to what? 180 degrees. So I can write that x plus y must be equals to 180. And I know the value of x as 45. So y will be what? 180 minus x, which is 180 minus 45. And that gives me 135 degrees. So the angle over here is what? 135 degrees. So the bearing of x from z is this angle over here. And we have deduced that number to be what? 135 degrees. So the correct option to this question is option B. Now, on to the next question. They were told that the bearing of P and Q from common point N are this and this respectively. So what does this mean? It means you have a common point, and let's call that common point N. So you have two bearings of P and Q. So the bearing of P from N is 20 degrees. So I'm first going to draw a bearing of what? The angle here is what? 20 degrees. So this becomes my point P. And the bearing of Q from N is 300 degrees. So I draw another, and 300 degrees will lie in this fourth quadrant. So I have something of this sort, and I have what? Yeah, I have something like this. So I have what? 300 degrees. Now I'm told to find, and this is my point Q. So yep. Now I'm told to find the bearing of P from Q. So I'm told to find the value of P from Q, and what that means is that I should find this angle over here. So how would I go about that? So now I know that the angle from here to this point over here is 300 degrees. So this other tiny section over here, I know that the angle of that will be equals to what? The angle of this will be equals to what? 300 plus 360 minus 300. So I know that this angle over here is what? I know that this angle over here is what? Is 60 degrees. And I know that this angle over here is 60 degrees. Then now for my alternate angle, I know that if this angle here is 60 degrees, that this angle also here must also be equals to what? 60 degrees. Now I can find the sum of this angle at point 10, and the sum of this angle at point 10 will be 60 plus 20, and that gives me 80 degrees. Now I'm told that if P and Q are also equidistant, that means distance from P to N and the distance from Q to N are equal. So what does that tell us? If line QN is equals to line PN, we know that this is an isosceles triangle, because in an isosceles triangle, you know that this angle, the length of two sides are equal. So this will be an isosceles triangle. And if it's an isosceles triangle, I know that this angle here and here also will definitely be equal. So in the same way as we did in the previous example, I label it as x and x. So I know that the sum of angle in a triangle is 180 degrees. So I can write that x plus 80 is equals to 180 degrees. So 2x will be equals to 180 minus 80. So 2x will be equals to 100 degrees. So x will be equals to what? 100 divided by 2, and that's equals to 50 degrees. So I know that the angle over here is what? 50 degrees, and the angle over here is 50 degrees. So the question asked me to calculate the bearing of P from N, which I've identified at this angle, and let me call that angle now. Let me call it Y. So now I know that the sum of angle in a straight line is 180. So the sum of this angle here plus the sum of x plus the sum of y must be equals to 180 degrees. So I can write out that what? That 60 plus x plus y must be equals to what? Must be equals to 180 degrees. So now I know that my x are found to be 50 degrees. So I know that 60 plus 50 plus y must be equals to 180. So this is like 110 plus y is equals to 180. So y will be equals to 180 minus 110, and that gives me what? 70 degrees. So this angle over here, y, is equals to 70 degrees. So the bearing of P from Q is 70 degrees, and the correct option to this question is option C. Now on to the next question. They were told that if the area of triangle PQR above is 12 root 3, we should find the value of Q. Now I'm going to draw that out again so you can see it clearly. So we have a triangle PQR, and I'm told to find this side here Q, and I'm told that if here is 60 degrees and the length of here is 8 centimeters. So based on our convention, the length of this side can be denoted as r, small r, and the length of this side opposite to this angle can be denoted as small p. If you remember our formula for calculating the area, we said if we know two sides and we know the angle between those two sides, we can find the area. So I can write that the area is equals to what? Half times, I know sides r and q, so I can write times rq, then sine of this angle that is between them, sine p. So the area I've been told is what? 12 root 3. So 12 root 3 is equals to 1 over 2 times my r, I'm told is what? 8, and I'm told to find the value of q, then times sine of what? 60 degrees. So when I cross multiply, I have 8 times sine 60 times q is equals to 2 times 12 root 3. Now if I divide both sides by 8 times sine 60 divided by 8 times sine 60, this cancels out, and I'm left with what? I'm left with q being equals to 2 times 12 root 3 over 8, and sine 60 is what? Root 3 over 2. So what does that become? That becomes what? 2 here 1 and 2 here goes in 8 times 4. Then 4 here 1 and 4 go in 12 what? 3 times. So I'm left with what? 3 times 2 is 6. So I'm left with q is equals to what? 6 root 3 over root 3. Now root 3 cancels root 3. I'm left with q is equals to what? 6 centimeter. So the length of this side of the triangle is what? 6 centimeter, and that makes A the correct option. So to recap, we applied the formula for calculating the area of a triangle if we know the length of two sides and the angle between them. So we said our area be equals to half times this length over here times this length over here times sine of this angle. But we have been given the area and we are told to find the value of q. So we just made q the square root of formula and we found it to be 6 centimeter. So now let's move on to the next question. We are asked that which of the following is a sketch of y is equals to sine x. So now to think about it, first thing I want us to do now is to try to imagine or try to sketch it, in which we have x value being here and here we have y value which is equals to 3 sine x. So let's assume x is 0, then sine 0 is 0 times 3 will give us 0. Then when x is 30, sine 30 will give us half, then times 3 will give us 1.5. Then you can fill in the table like that. And when we try to sketch this out, what do we have? And when we get to say 90, sine 90 is 1, then times 3 will give us 3. So what are you going to have? So for the first half, you are going to have, if you have your x value here and your y value here, you are going to have your x value here starting from 0, and it's going to get to the maximum value of 90 degrees when x is what? 90 degrees, before it moves down again to 180 degrees. Then it moves down till you get to what? 360 degrees. So if you remember, this was the sketch for our sine graph. And now since the number in front of the sine x is 3, so the amplitude is going to be 3. So this maximum point here is going to be what? 3. So now we have here, so this is basically the sketch. But if you look at the options you have, you can see that on the horizontal axis, instead of having angles of 90, 180 and so on, you're having angles such as pi over 2 and the likes. So what this is basically telling us is that the values of our angle is given in radians, and I'll just quickly mention this as a side note. So what this means, so when you have radians, so you should just note that pi radian is equals to what? 180 degrees. So 2 pi in radians now is equals to what? 360 degrees. And y pi over 2 radians in radians is equals to what? 90 degrees. So anywhere you see pi over 2, it actually represents 90 degrees. So our graph, we see that it starts from 0, then it gets to the maximum at 90 before it comes down. And if we trace it to the negative direction, it gets to the maximum at minus 3, like you have over here. So you have minus 3 before it moves up. So this makes the correct option to this question what? Option B. So the graph of y is equals to 3 sine x is equals to option B, this graph over here. So to recap, what we tried to do was try to sketch this graph with some values and we trace it out. Then as a side note, I told you how to convert measurement in radians to degrees. And so that when you see pi in radian, it means what? 180 degrees. So any other thing, so 2 pi is a factor of pi, and we know that pi is 180, so 2 pi will be 2 times 180. Then half pi will be half of 180, which is 90 degrees. So that is basically all with regards to this question. Now on to the last question we'll be looking at. I thought that in triangle XYZ, so I'm just going to quickly sketch that out. We have a triangle X, Y, and Z. So that angle XYZ is equals to 15. So angle XYZ, so deal with the central number. The central number here is Y. So the angle at Y is what? 15 degrees. Angle XZY, XZY, so Z is the central number. So the angle here is what? 45 degrees. The length xy is equals to 7 centimeter. So xy, this length over here is what? 7 centimeter. I told to find yz. So I told to find the value here yz. So I told to find yz. So now if I use a normal convention, the side opposite angle y will be small y, the side opposite angle x will be small x, which I'm told to find, and the side opposite angle z will be small z. So now I know this side and I know this angle, but I don't know this side and I don't know this angle. However, I can find this angle x over here. And how would I do that? So now if you look at it carefully, I see that this is a triangle, and I know that the sum of angle in a triangle must be equal to 180 degrees. So the angle at x plus the angle at y plus the angle at z must be equal to 180 degrees. So the angle at x now plus the angle of y is 15, and the angle at z is 45, is equals to 180 degrees. So the angle at x will be equals to what? 180 minus 15 minus 45. And when you punch that, you get what? You get 120 degrees. So the angle here is what? 120 degrees. So now I know this angle here and I know the side opposite. I know this angle here and I know the side. I don't know the side opposite. That's what I'm looking for. So I can apply the sine rule. So I can write that what? I can write that z over sine z is equals to what? Is equals to x over sine x. Now let's try to evaluate the value of sine z. So now sine z will be equals to what? Sine what? 45. And if we check our table, we know that we'll see that sine 45 is same thing as 1 over root 2. So now let's try to evaluate the value of sine x. So sine x now, our x is 120 because what? Sine of 120. And if you remember, 120 lies in the second quadrant. So we can also write it as what? Sine of what? 180 minus theta. And that is equals to sine of 180 minus 120. And that is equals to sine of 60. And we know that the sine of 60 is what? Root 3 over 2. So we can substitute it here. So we have z. So our value of z is what? Is 7. So we have 7 over sine 45 is equals to x, which is what we are looking for, over sine x in this case is what? 120. So if I make x the square root of formula, I see that x is equals to 7 times sine 120 over sine 45. So substituting the value of sine 120 and sine 45, I have the value of x to be equals to 7 times sine 120 will found to be what? Root 3 over 2. Then over sine 45 are found to be what? 1 over root 2. So this is the same thing as saying 7 times root 3 over 2. And when I bring this to the other side, I have what? Times root 2. So what does that become? That becomes x becomes 7, then root 3 times root 2 is same thing as saying root 3 times 2, which gives me root 6. Then over what? I'm left with over 2. So the value of x is what? 7 root 6 over 2. And that makes the correct option to this question, option B. So to recap, what we did was, first, we tried to find this angle over here by using the sum of a triangle to be 180 and found it to be 120 degrees. Then we applied the sine rule using this length and this angle and this length over here and this angle. So since this length over here, x, which is length, yz, which is what we are looking for, we made x the vector formula and we found it to be 7 root 6 over 2. So one thing that is apparent now, or that is clear to see, is that sometimes you have to take note of the options before you start solving the questions, because if you had not taken note of the options, you could have been working in decimal and your answer would have been in decimal. So if this is what you did, then to find the correct option, what you can do is that you can try to convert all these options to decimal. So the option that corresponds to your answer will be the correct option. But to avoid that, you can try to work in terms of the option. And since we see that our options are given in terms of sword, then we'll try to work in terms of sword. So we'll not have to do too many computations. So this pretty much sums up all you need to know regards to trigonometry. So I will encourage you to go through the exercises to try to see if you can tackle some of the questions that have been given. and also you can go through the JAMB past questions to find additional questions so that you can hone your skills with relation to solving trigonometric questions. So that will be all for now. Bye.